Hello, Patrice. How you
Hi,
doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm good. Always the better for spending time with you.
Aren't we so lucky? So it's been what? Oh, we met last January in Jamaica.
Is it only that amount of time?
I know.
Unbelievable. I feel as if I've known you for so much longer, but yeah, we did.
Where you met
We
airport.
did. I met Airport Patrice, very efficient Patrice. I'd heard amazing things about you, and they all live to be true, and some.
I love that. And I was like, who is this CEO that is coming on this retreat? I was like, okay, Remi. But we met, with Jess's and Kasani's amazing facilitation, we got deep really quickly, didn't we?
We got really deep really quickly, and I think there was a kind of an ease there. And I think some of the others had kind of met and known each other, but I think for me it was just an easy click. I think my inner child responded to your more parent side, even though I'm older than you. And if you remember, you were the one that was kind of sorting out my money
Yeah,
for
I was
me and
like,
making
okay, yeah, let's do
sure.
this. Let's do this. I like
Yeah,
control freak Patrice.
I think,
Um,
well, yeah, but I think it kind of met, didn't it? Sort of met a need, and then I think that began that reverse thing sort of straight away. Like one would maybe think, okay, she's older, she's going to be more together, but actually on that level, you were more together. Hopefully, I've got gifts I can give you, but
no,
definitely I remember that
you're the gift that
spot.
keeps giving, Remy. But
Hmm.
there were kind of, I guess, three, not generations, but probably 3 decades on that trip, right?
Yeah.
Um, and what I found really interesting was that as a group of women, we obviously got together. Our barriers came down almost instantly because that's what we were there for, to do the deep inner work, but
Mm,
allowing us to step into that. And it was actually really helpful that you didn't, like for me, I didn't know anyone.
mm,
And for me, it was
mm,
great. I'd only met Jess once.
mm.
And that convinced me, and that was similar to you as well.
Yeah,
Um,
that was exactly the same. But I think it was about exchange, not age.
yeah,
I
and
think that
that's
was the
it.
thing.
And I think you've captured that perfectly because it's the experience, and whether that's from a younger or a older perspective, it's different experiences that we've all held and the different
Mm,
viewpoints. So I think as both of us are coaches, we
mm,
obviously use different models. So the transactional analysis, for example, and for those of you who don't know,
mm,
it's where we're able to kind of take a third person view and an objective view on a
mm.
situation as we take clients through this kind of coaching facilitation. And I think where we have it's like a group coaching session. It was almost like a group coaching session. And I think
Mm,
our observations of each other, for me personally, our
mm,
observations of each other as we've held other conversations with such positive, unconditional positive regard, as we're taught to in coaching, but also that balance between like, but what does it really mean underneath it? So being able to participate in that from a coach perspective, a mentor perspective, and just like a friend perspective, I think really forged,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other thing that I like is there is the openness and the curiosity and the recognition that, wisdom doesn't retire and wisdom can sit in and young, middle or kind of older. And it's the curiosity and the willingness to learn.
Mm.
Um, and I think the willingness to be challenged, like I've said that to you before, you
Mm.
have permission to challenge me, and you
Mm.
do. Including telling me certain bits of my collateral are not up, not doing me,
So you're going
not
to laugh
doing
at
me
me.
service.
I did a screen recording. You're going to see it after this call. I'm going to send it to you. But I was going through your
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile earlier, and I was like, Ruby hasn't said she's done X, Y,
Again,
and Z. Yeah, I have. I've done it again. But these alternative viewpoints and
no, and
perspectives.
I think that's I love that. It's
Mm,
the learning. It's that
mm,
for me is the kind of the reverse learning, and it's interesting to me around like where and who I receive challenge from, and
mm,
it is about the energy, but also I recognise that sure I've got wisdom and a lot to pass on, but I've got a heck of a lot to learn, and that's what
mm,
excites me.
mm,
Whether that's around technology, definitely technology, or kind of approaches. I am not the finished article, and the
mm,
learning will never stop. And that's why I like I've got friends of all ages, probably from about late 20s to their 70s.
Mm,
And I'm 60. And I think that's what, four generations. I could be your mum,
yeah.
age wise. You
Yeah.
could probably be my mum in other ways.
It's true. It's true. But you know what I love, and I guess probably we live quite relatively close with each other, so I think that's
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah,
But I think
yeah,
just your permission that I gave you also to challenge me as I was in that motherly but non-judgmental sense as well. Like you saw me and you kind of have
mm,
always been
mm,
like you understand me from my core because we've spent so much time together in
yeah,
like with all of our
yeah,
shackles taken away, no defenses up. And then you also see me from a professional perspective as well. And so you're unique in that position to be able to know me that well, to call me out when things are like, hold on a
yeah.
sec. It's like that's a bit deviating a little bit from what you said you wanted to do, not from what you think I should be doing, but
Mm,
from what you said. And I think that's the
mm,
key to have people around us that are holding us to account in a really nice, safe way. And so I guess when it comes to like intergenerational learning,
yeah.
what does it look like and what does that mean for you?
I mean, I think every generation has something to learn, and every generation has something to teach.
Mm,
And so that's why I always come back to, it's about exchange. So
mm,
it's exchange of ideas, it's exchange of wisdom, it's exchange of learning. And actually, I think it's exchange of energy.
mm,
So for me, it's not about comparison, it's about curiosity.
mm,
So I don't need, I don't really compare myself to anybody, to be honest, because I think that's a rabbit hole that's just not worth
mm,
going down. I have my days, we all have our moments of doing that, but it doesn't take you anywhere. Um, and I think it's about hearing each other's experiences and each other's truths.
mm,
And I see that playing out in friendships, but I also see it playing out in terms of, purpose is ageless, isn't it? And
yeah,
so we can still continue to learn from each other. That's how I sort of interpret it.
yeah.
And I think it's interesting when you think about it in the workplace, because it's quite different to probably how when I was kind of younger in the
Mm,
workplace, opposed to how it kind of is now. And I think I can see that some people struggle with that,
mm,
because there's a perception that if you're well, there's lots of perceptions. It's either that you're maturer and you know it all,
mm,
or it's maturer and you're no longer relevant. And so
mm,
people get worried about that.
yeah,
Or there's a perception that if you're younger, you don't know anything.
mm,
Or there's a perception that if you're younger, you're really trying really hard all the time to try to prove yourself. So everyone's kind of got their struggles and their perceptions. For me, the beauty is in bringing that together.
mm,
Um, and I think that's what I'd encourage, like, leaders and organisations, is bring it together so that
mm,
people can learn from each other.
yeah. And what do you think? Sorry, I've gone into interview mode.
I'm
Do you
quite
think?
enjoying it.
Do
Yes,
you
I
think?
know. Yes,
Think?
no, please do.
So part of the work that I do is
Mm,
around reverse mentoring and bringing, I call it intergenerational intelligence and developing that within organizations. And
mm,
I see the reverse mentoring is an involving piece. But
yeah.
definitely I think the call that I hear more so now is that need to connect intergenerationally. Now
Mm,
you have coached like hundreds of like senior leaders.
mm.
Where do you think what do you think is the key trigger for the disconnect?
Oh, that's a really good question. Really good question. I think it's at quite a sort of human level. I think it's to do with fear, and I think
Mm,
it's to do with change. Those are the two things that immediately kind of come up with for me.
mm,
I think people are fearful of change, and so therefore, not all, but some people that I
mm,
coach that are at the maturer end are frightened of being relevant,
mm,
and they're kind of the purpose. And actually, asking big questions like around mortality. And if I've got this far, because in the
mm.
beginning it's all about building and building to
Taste.
get to a certain point, yeah, and a
Mm,
pace. I'm going to be 61. I know I'm not going to be alive for another 61. I
Mm,
very much doubt it. So then there are the big questions around mortality and
mm,
purpose in a different way and kind of
mm,
legacy. If you're self-aware and open, that's you see that as an adventure and excitement. If you're fearful, that's
mm,
actually quite a scary thing
mm,
because if you take all of that away, then
mm.
who are you?
Yeah,
So that leads into identity.
that's it. Yeah. And there's a term, phobo. Have you heard of it?
Mm,
Yeah.
no?
Fear,
What's that?
fear of becoming obsolete.
Oh,
So this is the
yeah.
terminology that I've seen repeated over and over again, but I'm seeing
Mm,
like senior executives like us using that as a term of fear of becoming obsolete, which some people then hunker down into kind of almost scarcity behaviors, which means
mm,
protection, which means not
yeah.
allowing for that curiosity and where it may lead,
Mhm.
versus like a push towards doing something rather than a pull to say, actually, what is the root of this fear? And
Yeah.
I think you just on the head, which really comes down to identity. And
Mm,
a lot of the work that we do in coaching is around how to find your purpose and understand your identity, regardless of the social constructs in which you operate. And so,
yeah. Yeah.
you actually, this is a common theme between the both of us, where we've pivoted quite significantly in our
Yeah.
career. And that means all of that social capital that we build up in one particular area, we can only take a certain amount of it into the new spaces that we move into. And so it does take a great deal of courage and bravery to do that. Especially
Yeah.
with you in your third chapter and what you're going into now, which is, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's not wasted, but it's like the foundations are there, but it's another string to our bow that
A
we're developing.
whole other, it's a
It's a whole
whole
new
other, it's
world.
a
It's
whole
a
other,
whole
it's a
new
whole
world.
new world. And it was the same. Yeah. When I left sort of PR and then to start again in kind of leadership you feel, who you are, but
Mm,
you have to have, I think there's something about humility
yeah.
comes into it actually, because which again for me links to curiosity and wanting to learn. They're
Mm,
all sort of intertwined because you, in effect, of course, you've banked time and years and experience, but
mm,
in effect, you're sort of starting again.
mm.
And
Yeah.
that can feel quite kind of scary. And that's what I mean around some people, even the identity of, yeah, they're still a mum, but their children are grown up and
Mm,
don't need them in the same way.
mm.
And I think a lot of people start saying, well, who am I? Kind of, who am I now?
And
You
that's
know?
it. Every single stage, like these
Yeah.
pivots and things that we step into,
Mm.
it's a shedding, isn't it? It's a shedding of that personality or what we've built up in terms of social capital in our roles in our
Mm.
organizations. But then I think when we're looking at it from a generational perspective, it's also a bridge because
Yeah.
this generation, the Gen Z, the Gen Alphas are going more from a purpose perspective. So we've got two ends of the spectrum
Mm.
almost, and this is very generalizing. So you've got status on one end, and then you have
Mm.
like purpose and like what is the right thing to do on the other hand, where
Mm.
actually some of the things that we found attainable, me as a millennial, um,
Mm.
and when we look at the boomers, for example, which was like status and money, we also
Mm.
have like there is with the crisis and the way of the market and the housing market, especially in the UK as it stands right now, like the ability to
Mm.
attain what maybe was attainable before is very, very difficult and challenging. So that is very healthy
Yeah.
to pivot to like
Yeah.
what's purpose and what is identity, because if you were chasing that, then it would
Yeah.
be very sad
But
effect.
I think in a way, but I think all generations are possibly seeking the purpose, the contrast, say, between me and my daughter, which is she's one of my biggest supporters, but also one of my biggest critics
Mm,
in a good way. She has
mm,
that permission to do that, in that she's looking for the purpose in life, possibly earlier than I
yeah,
was. I think that's a difference that I do see with this
yeah,
generation, and things need to really be much more meaningful, it
mm,
feels to me. So she's looking for that purpose and her identity. I'm also, I have a sense of my purpose, but the identity has changed and shaped, as you said, as a result of changing
mm,
kind of work and recognizing that actually my identity is not linked to just what I do as work.
yeah.
It just isn't.
Take some time,
Um,
take some time to get there.
it takes some time to get there, and some of us get there sooner, and some of them, some of us get there kind of later. And I think the mutual mentoring or the reverse mentoring in the middle
Mm,
is kind of where the magic can happen.
yeah, no, definitely. And just the
That's
ability to be able to have these conversations and share, like, this is where I'm at, and this is why I am
exactly.
where I'm at, and then taking it from
Yeah.
there. Okay, so for leaders or individuals that are considering like how to really cultivate and make the most of like intergenerational intelligence, let's call it, what would you, so you've talked about curiosity and humility as being the
Mm,
key things. For me, it definitely hinges on curiosity to be able to ask those questions. And it doesn't have to be in a formal mentoring environment, but it's a how do you speak more than you listen? How do
yeah.
you tap into the intelligence that you have around you? And that's
Mm,
like through thoughtful questioning, which is derived
mm,
like having curiosity to learn about others. I think for me is
mm,
my biggest, I guess, tip to people who are interested in almost tackling this generational divide and really
mm,
tapping into it. What would you
mm.
say?
I think it's worth looking at the sort of the whole notion and concept of power.
Mm, okay.
So, kind of where does the power sit? And I think that the power sharing
Mm,
is the new leadership currency.
mm,
I think we've definitely moved from sort of control and command
mm,
into something that feels more kind of equal. But
mm.
what does equal really mean?
Oh, I love that, Remy.
What does it really mean? And I think looking at how power plays out in your organization, in your teams, in your structures, because it's easy to say everybody can have a great idea. We want all the generations to contribute. That's easy to say, but actually, to make that
How
happen,
do you
you
enact
need to
it?
think about how do you enact it?
Mm.
Who holds the P for the
Yeah.
kind of the power? But if you can do that, and I think even things like listening circles,
Mm,
intergenerational listening circles,
mm,
shadowing
mm,
for the day, setting up shadow boards
mm.
or leadership teams,
Yeah.
but also mixing them up. So having an intergenerational shadow board and
Yeah.
listening, and think of that as power sharing.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think that's the new leadership currency. I really do.
Okay.
I think that's the future.
I love that, Remy. But who holds the P? That's what I really like. Who holds the
Who
P?
holds the P? Yeah,
Who
who holds?
holds the P? Yeah, I
Well,
love
it's always worth seeking that out. It's the same, with decisions. Who
yeah.
you often find teams
Sounds so
sort of
racy,
debate.
is it really? No, I'm not really sure. It's not like it's supposed to be
They don't
consultative
know.
and informed, not actually like responsible for it. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, exactly. And I think then as coaches on an individual level, then it's looking at, as you said, how do people feel when things get taken away from them? They
Mm,
feel sort of powerless.
yeah,
How
agree.
do some people feel about the advent of our AI
Mm,
and the speed and pace at which things are done in organizations? The pressure that some older people that I coach feel to keep up,
mm,
whilst also going through this whole thing about relevance and identity. That's a whole heap of things going on
mm,
at any one given time.
mm. Okay.
But it's great to see, I'm a coach, not a campaigner, but
Mm,
I love all the campaigns that I see around, anti-ageism, longevity,
mm,
etc., because we have got multi-generations in organizations. So the campaigners that are out there doing that campaigning is fantastic.
yeah,
I think our job
yeah.
is to help the
Facilitate
people
that conversation. Sorry
is
to
to
interrupt you, but
facilitate
yeah.
the conversations. Yeah, facilitate the conversations at a group level, organizational level, but also help those individuals who don't have the confidence to campaign, either
Mm,
young and more mature. Um, my thing, the third chapter offer is really all around the relationship you have with yourself.
mm.
But I love the fact that lots of noise is being made around ageism on both sides. I think it's good.
Well, thank you, Remy, for this wonderful
My
conversation.
pleasure.